Hi, I'm Marcus Coward, host of Wake Up New Bedford, and I'm here with Taylor, TR Michaud, author, and we are here to talk about his life, his work, and any future ideas he might be talking about, along with explaining how he published some of his books. So, Taylor, glad to have you.
Yeah, glad to be here. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. So, for the audience, would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, no, so originally, I'm from New Bedford. I'm a New Bedford boy. And, I would say that I guess one of the highlights of my life started when I got to be about 12 years old. When I got 12 years old, I could spend a lot of time comprehending, what I was reading, what I was watching. And I love fantasy.
Okay, me too.
So that's what jumped me into the fantasy author. I also got introduced to a game called Dungeons and Dragons.
At 12?
At 12 years old.
Okay, wow.
It's funny because back in the day, I know you won't remember, you're too young, but back in the day, we used to have these big computers with these giant 8-inch floppy disks.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And I was at a buddy of mine's house, me and two other guys, and it was for New Year's Eve. His parents had gone out. And we started playing Dungeons and Dragons. Hey, you got to check this game out. Okay. I'm going to tell you the truth. I turned around and I said, yeah, this game stinks. I'm going to go back to playing this computer.
Really?
And the computers were archaic.
Yeah.
The video games and everything were like archaic.
For sure, for sure.
And then another friend of mine said, listen, I'll show you how to play because this isn't really that good.
Okay.
He'd been playing for a little bit longer than me. And he showed me how to play. And I'll tell you what, it opened up a whole new world because I love using your imagination.
Me too, yeah.
Albert Einstein, and I'm pretty sure it was Albert Einstein, said, logic will get you from point A to point B, but imagination will take you anywhere. Right?
I love that.
So it just opened up my mind to the game. And it was great because my friend's father also played.
Really?
Another friend of mine, his father played. So at the time, I'd say in my young teenage years, I played with my friend, Trent, his name's Trent. I played with him, and he had great battle scenes, and I found his description to be a little lacking.
Okay.
And my friend's father, Ben, he had great descriptions, but his battle scenes were lacking.
Okay.
So eventually, years later, I would say probably 7, 8 years later, I decided to take best of both worlds, and I started to become what they call the DM.
Yeah, I played Dungeons and Dragons.
You played it? Okay,
yeah,
cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Back in the day, it was not a popular thing.
Sure, okay.
Back in the day, if you was going to high school playing Dungeons and Dragons, you were not getting a prom date.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? And everything was the satanic panic back then. Everything was like, it's that game's satanic. Rock and roll's satanic, so forth and so on. So I started DMing, and I got a group of friends together. We started playing on Saturdays. And our Saturdays looked exactly like 10:30. We'd get together. We'd play Dungeons and Dragons till about 5.
Wow.
We'd stop, send a couple of guys out to go like get Kentucky Fried Chicken or something, clean up. They'd come back. We'd eat. Maybe 6:30, 7 o'clock. We'd start playing a game called Marvel, which was also a game published by TSR.
Okay.
Okay. And it's basically Marvel superheroes. You can either pick a superhero, you can roll up your own superhero with superpowers.
Okay.
We played that till probably, I'd say, 6:30, 7 o'clock till about 11.
Wow.
And then we'd play a card game from TSR called Spellfire.
Okay.
Till like 2 in the morning. And then Sundays we'd recoup. And then, like I said, I was a young man at the time, so, you work Monday through Friday. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that was the thing, like, we weren't locked into a room and not doing anything else. Like, we had other stuff, and we realized, which was part of the problem with the satanic panic back in the 80s, was it's a game.
Yes.
It's a role.
Yeah.
It's like
what we make out of it.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
It's like the best way I described it is this. Like this particular actor or actress isn't this person. This is who they really are in real life. They're just playing. They're role playing this character for a movie. You know what I mean? So that really got me into my imagination and opening up a little bit, and then really got me into fantasy. I mean, like movies like Conan the Barbarian back then, Excalibur. These are all earlier movies that we look at them now. We go, oh man,
Yeah, this is old.
Yeah, this is an old movie, like, and you could tell with the CGI and stuff like that. Like, they didn't even have CGI, I think, at that time, you know?
They're using puppets and stuff. Yeah.
Right. So no, so I was just, you know, I was just the everyday kid that grew up. I had the best of both worlds because I did martial arts when I was 12. I played football in high school.
Okay.
So, you know, I had that, I don't know if you want to call it this per se, but I had that nerd jock meet in the middle type of thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So you experienced both sides.
Yeah, so I just experienced both sides. So, yeah, I was able to get a prom date.
Okay, great. Yeah.
But there was a lot of guys who played just D&D who didn't have a prom date. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
But yeah, and that's pretty much it. You know, I've floated around between Fairhaven. I floated around to North Dartmouth. As I shared with you earlier, I'm in the process of moving, you know, back into New Bedford.
Yeah.
So, you know, I actually can't wait because I can get back into writing.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
I kind of had to put my writing on hold for a little bit.
So, what high school did you go to?
So I went to Greater New Bedford, Voch.
Okay.
When I went there, you used to have to take a test to get accepted into Voch.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing back then was, well, if you go to Voch, it's going to be hard to go to a college, and you know. And at the time, it was a little bit. But I didn't go right to college when I got out of high school. You know, I went back to college later in life. But the good thing about vocational school, it teaches you a trade.
Sure.
You know, so you're able to actually say, you know what, I want to get out into the workforce and make some money. You know what I mean?
What did you learn there, trade-wise?
So I took up architectural drafting.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, I love architecture.
Okay, sure.
I love architecture so much. My girlfriend and I went to Disney World back in 2019. That's the one in Florida, I think, Disney World. And we didn't really go on any rides, very little rides. I spent more time taking a lot of pictures of the architecture down there.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Now, this love of architecture, did that come before your interest in writing and fantasy?
It actually came, well, I liked doing, you know, the dungeon mastering, you know, I liked doing the stories and setting up the adventures. And I would ask the guys every time we played, after every Saturday we'd play a certain amount, how did you guys like it? How did you guys like it? So that way it put me in the right path of what they liked and what they didn't like about it. And I've always been like that.
Okay.
Even with my books that I write, I'll tell people, hey, message me, let me know what you like, what you didn't like. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I've always, when I got to that middle teenage years and I started high school, it was something about architecture that always grabbed me. Like, I like a lot of the old looking architecture.
I agree.
And that being said, on the flip side, I like a lot of these new, you know, weird, just, you know, constructions and, you know, how they, you know, make buildings and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I've always been in architectural drafting. I've always been a fanatic. I've worked for an architect for a little bit of time. When I went back to college, BCC, I was 30 years old. I'm 52 now.
Okay.
I was 30 years old. I graduated with an associate degree in science for structural engineering. I was fortunate enough to talk to a gentleman named Leslie Robinson. He's the structural engineer for the World Trade Towers.
Oh, wow.
Before they got attacked.
Sure.
He was the one that did the original design for that. So I've always been, like, my mindset has always been that engineering mindset. And then when I was 22, I had a stroke.
Wow.
I had a stroke from a chemical I worked with. And some people, they're not able to rebound from it. I was in good shape because, as I told you, I played football, I did martial arts and so forth. And I was able to rebound out of it. And it didn't affect me like it affects most people.
Sure.
But I'm going to tell you this. I think by having that stroke, you know, they say you only use 10% of your brain. I feel like it opened up another side of the brain because
Really?
nobody would expect, you know, very little people expect an engineer. Have you ever talked to an engineer? Have you ever like really sat down and talked with them?
Sure, I know
I mean,
a couple.
it's like you're better off like talking to the wall sometimes. They're just so technical, and the way they talk is like, you know, they have very little personality, it seems, as far as, you know, joking around and stuff. And I feel like it opened up a little bit of my brain because then I said, you know what? I want to write. You know what I mean? I want to write also. So my first book, The Ring of Darkness, I had that story in my head for like 10 years.
With that, before writing it?
Before I wrote it, correct.
Yeah,
before I wrote it. And this was after the stroke. What got me to write the book was a friend of mine and I were walking around. I think I shared this with you before.
Please.
We were walking around, and I told him, I said, hey, man, I'm thinking about writing a book. And he just stopped. I mean, I could see it almost out of a movie. He just stopped, and he's like, dude, everybody wants to write a book. 1% of the people write a book. Come on, let's go. You know what I mean? And I'm like, I'm going to
really
show this son
dismissive.
of...
Okay,
yeah.
wow.
And I said, yeah, I'm going to show this son of a gun I can write a book.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I did.
Wow.
And it's just been, you know, it was like tapping into something that I really enjoy. You know, I work full-time as a calibration technician, which is kind of in the engineering field. But, man, I love when I sit down and, like, just shut the door to my office.
Yeah.
And it's like a whole new world.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
A good way for people maybe to understand that is there's a movie called The Man Who Invented Christmas about Charles Dickens and writing the Christmas Carol.
Okay.
And when I watched that movie, it's one of my favorite movies. When I watched that movie, I'm like, man, I can see myself in this movie. You know what I mean? Because he lets the characters take over.
Okay.
You know, he gets himself, and this is what I do, is I get myself into the character. And I think to myself, okay, if I was so-and-so, what would this guy do? Or what would this girl be doing?
Sure. You really
know what
put
I mean?
yourself in their shoes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's the best way to put it. I really put myself in their shoes. And, you know, the comical thing, when it first happened, my girlfriend looked at me like, what's going on here? When I'm setting up battle scenes, I'm actually standing up, choreographing the battle scenes.
That's great. I mean,
Yeah.
how else could you figure out, like, the physics of it? You know?
Right.
Yeah.
And the thing is when I write the battle scene and I want, and you're reading it, I want you to feel like you're there, like you know
Yes.
everything that's going on.
You want the reader to get up and start acting it out. Yeah,
Right, exactly. So, so no, I mean, that just started, you know, that started the whole, you know, storytelling and so forth. You know, it started at a young age. I kind of like soaked it in like a sponge. And then I said, you know, I love architecture, but I like storytelling.
Sure.
I got a good job. I'm fortunate to have a good job right now. But I would retire tomorrow if I could get a literary agent and just write books for a living. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna lie. I'm working on my third book now.
Yeah.
Which is a follow-up to my fantasy adventure, my first book.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, in those 10 years before you started writing, were you taking notes or was it all just in your head?
No, actually, you're referring to the 10 years where I was thinking about the story. It was all in my head.
Really?
I wasn't taking any notes at all. It was all in my head. When I started writing, I was in between jobs. When I started writing, I wrote, and it was like 100 pages. And I'm like, there's no way the book is going to start and end at 100 pages. Like,
Correct.
There's
You're
no
gonna
way.
need some
you know,
more.
it's going to need more stuff. Like,
Yeah.
I threw stuff out there. And what I didn't realize at the time was what I was doing was outlining the story. And that's how I write now. I write where I outline the story. Like, I know who the, you know, I come up with the heroes in the book and I come up with the villains. And then I come up with a plot to, okay, why is the villain, what's behind him? Like, you know, what's the plot that he's
Give him
after?
some motive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I write the plot down. And then what happens is I actually sit there and I write the beginning of the book, I write the middle of the book, and I write where I want the book to end.
Sure.
The climax of where the book's going to end, you know? And then I just turn around and write. And I let the characters take me from point A to point B, from point B to point C.
Sure.
The book that I'm writing now, called The Ruins, there was a part in the book where I'm like, okay, we're ready to go. And I felt like the characters were saying, no, we're not ready to go yet. We still got some stuff to do around here.
Okay.
And it pulled me into writing another chapter or two
Oh, interesting.
in
Okay.
that. So let me elaborate a little bit on that.
Go ahead, please. Yeah.
So in the first book, The Ring of Darkness, the story or the adventure, because I always think of Dungeons and Dragons, because this is where I kind of get this from.
Yeah.
Takes place in a village called Oakhurst Village.
Okay.
People are disappearing in that village. People who are traveling through the village are disappearing at night. So the local militia sends out a 12-man unit to go find out, okay, what's going on here? Well, the 12-man unit disappears. So now they put up a sign, you know, classic Dungeons and Dragons, adventurers wanted.
Sure.
You know what I mean? It's basically almost like that, hey, everybody meets in a bar and whatever happens.
Yep,
you know,
yep.
you've played, so you know when
Yep,
you're
yep,
trying
yep.
to bring everybody together, right? So these adventurers, young adventurers, all get together and they go out adventuring, and this is where the book starts.
Okay.
Now, where the book ends is it ends in Oakhurst Village. It started in Oakhurst Village and it ends in Oakhurst Village.
Okay.
I want to make a series out of those characters. Now, these characters are close to my heart because these are the characters that my friends and I rolled up and played Dungeons and Dragons with 30 years ago.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
So
you know what I mean?
So they're really personal. Yeah,
Right, so
sure.
they're really personal. In fact, just a side note, I did a book signing and brought one of the guys who's a character named Divis.
Wow.
He's an elf in that book. And he was just so overrelated because the girl who bought the book wanted him to also sign the book.
Wow.
So he
That's
was
so
like,
cool.
wow,
Yeah,
all right.
yeah.
And he signed the book and he wrote his character's name there, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And of course that opens up ideas for me in this new book. But so as I was saying, it ends in Oakhurst Village. In this book that I'm writing now, The Ruins, which is the follow-up to it.
Yeah.
It's the third book that I wrote, but it's the follow-up to
Yeah.
it. The second book is a standalone. The adventure starts in Oakhurst Village, and the party travels west.
Okay.
So you get to see some of the countryside, some of the villages, some of the towns and the cities that they go through, and the little things that they go through or experience on a daily basis.
Sure.
And as I was saying before, like there was a town that they were at. It's called Shadowville.
Okay.
It's in the shadow. The village is in the shadow of a mountain, and not to give too much away, but it's actually a village that's protected
Okay.
by vampires.
Sure.
They're called the Lords of the Night, and it's a council of like 7 vampires.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, we're ready to move on to the next phase. And I felt like the character was like, no, we still got some things to do around here.
For sure. For
So,
sure.
you know, I wrote a couple more chapters in that. And that's what I mean by when I say, you know, I let the characters tell me what they want to do,
Yeah.
you know? And to me, my job as the author is to share the story with you and to make sure that the characters don't do something that they wouldn't do
Sure.
originally. You know what I mean? Like,
keep their integrity.
right, keep their, because I don't want the reader to be like, wow, that character did that? That doesn't seem like that character.
Yeah.
That's what it is. But I let the characters tell the story. You know? I'm just, you know, I'm like the translator.
And you're trying not to rush the process.
And I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not going to rush the process. I'm going to tell you why. I feel that I feel a lot of authors. And I don't know if I'm saying this right, but
Go ahead.
I feel like a lot of authors sometimes are all about the money, and they just pump out junk. You know, they just pump out filler.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And some people like that. I mean, everybody likes something different. I myself, I don't like that.
Okay.
So I would rather turn around and write a book and take a little bit longer to write that book than to pump out what I think is junk, and you're not going to like it. You know,
Sure.
you're in there, you're taking, if you're the consumer, and I'm looking at it as a consumer, if you're the consumer, you're spending your money on an author who you really don't know about. I mean, you know about James Patterson, you know about Stephen King. These guys already, you know, walked the walk. J.K. Rowling, you know about her. She's already gone through it, and you know that you see their finished product. But you're taking a chance on an author you don't know.
Sure. Yeah.
Small-time author, you know, self-published author. I want to make it worth your while that when you spend the money
Yeah.
and you read the book, you go, wow, this is pretty good. I think I'm going to find out what this next guy's book is.
Yeah. Okay.
And I've actually had that happen. I've actually experienced that several times where people come in and say, hey, when's the next one coming out?
Wow.
Hey.
That must feel great.
Oh, that feels awesome.
Yeah.
The best feeling I ever had was, I want to say back in 2019, we went up to the Barnes & Nobles in Burlington, Mass.
Okay.
When I say we, my girlfriend goes with me a lot of times.
Sure.
And I'm upstairs. If you've ever been to the Barnes & Nobles in Burlington, it's a giant place.
Okay.
They actually have a second floor. They have escalators and all that other stuff.
Wow.
Like you wouldn't expect that in a bookstore. And I was coming down the escalator, and I happened to look at the table, and there's my girlfriend talking to this, you know, young teenage kid. And the kid's mother standing right there. Come to find out, the kid actually came in just to buy my book.
Wow.
And that right there, like, floored me.
How would you even find that out? Or how would she find it out?
So when I got down the escalator and I went over to the table and I started talking to the kid's mom was telling me that she had come in and she saw the sign that Barnes & Noble's posted saying that, hey, you know, this Saturday, so-and-so is going to come in, you know, TR Michaud, here's my books, and, you know, had pictures of them.
Okay.
And she looked at it. The kid plays Dungeons and Dragons.
Okay.
And she looked at it and she said, oh, I think he might like this. So she took pictures of it, brought it home, and showed him.
Okay.
And he was like, yeah, I want to get that book. I want to get that book.
Wow.
So when I get to the table, I want to say the kid was like 16. His name is Quinn. I mean, I can remember it like that.
Yeah.
He was just like so excited. And I'm telling you, man, what a great feeling. Because I'm like, wow, this guy's sitting here. This kid's coming in looking for my book.
Yeah.
So I definitely don't want to be pumping out no trash.
For sure. Yeah.
You know what I mean? I want to pump it out. I want to make it worth his while to sit there and wait. You know what I'm saying?
Like true quality and effort can really translate into real people excitement.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And can really impact them and make them look forward to it. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
If it's
exactly.
quality. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. And you know, I mean, I could tell. I can almost like remember this kid's conversation with him. Like he was telling me he played Dungeons and Dragons. He was playing a Ranger class, and I said, "Oh, you're gonna like it when I come out with the next book because I'm introducing 2 new characters, and one of them's a Ranger."
Okay,
and,
cool.
You know what I mean? And so you know, he's excited. You know, he was excited. The biggest problem was I wanted to get it out in 2020. We had the COVID.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
And I have a friend. Or should I say an acquaintance that's a fantasy author.
Okay.
And he wrote his first book, and he was from originally Warwick, Rhode Island. He's moved to Hawaii as of recently. And his first book did really good in all the schools up in Warwick, Rhode Island. Like they were asking him to come in and did really good. He released his second book the 3rd week of January 2020.
Okay.
And that's what killed him. Because at that point, that's when, you know, the country was starting to realize, okay, we've got something going on here. A lot of people are getting sick from, so they shut down. So he couldn't get into the Barnes and Nobles. He couldn't promote his book or anything like that. The schools were shut down and so forth. So I backed off of, I'm going to back off a release of mine because I see what's going on.
Smart, yeah.
And I'm going to try to do more social media marketing the best that I can. And I was reading about it and trying to do it like that. And then life just happens. Like, you know, like I shared earlier, like I took the week off from work because I wanted to do a lot of writing and try to finish this book off.
Yeah.
And here I am. I'm in the middle of getting ready to move. So life happens. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And now I've pushed off till 2025 to get this book out. Because in between then, like I said, life happens. And you know, I don't want to pump out junk.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to be, oh, yeah, and this is good. Oh, that was a crappy ending.
Because it's going to live forever.
Yeah, exactly. You know, but yeah, I mean, it's fantastic. It's fantastic going in there, opening your imagination up, and go just closing an office door. It's like a whole new world, you know.
And so, do you need to be on the level of James Patterson or Stephen King in order to be making serious money off of this?
Oh yeah, definitely, yeah. As self-published authors, you know, it's hard for a self-published author to get some traction or get going. A couple of reasons why. Okay, a lot of literary agents, they don't want to take the shot on the new guy or the new girl. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They, for some reason, in their mind, they're going to be like, "Yep, Stephen King's going to call me tomorrow, and I'm going to represent his next book."
Yeah.
The truth of the matter is, Stephen King is not going to call you tomorrow.
Yeah.
Unless his literary agent retires or, God forbid, passes on. Okay? He's not going to call you. And plus, he's so well known already, he could probably do it all himself and not have to get a literary agent. And I say that, I bring Stephen King up because his son Owen King actually proved this point that I'm mentioning to you on, I believe it was a talk show or a podcast, something like that. And a couple literary agents, no. Well, he sent out, you know, his manuscript for them to look at, but he sent it under a different name. He didn't send it out Owen King. He sent it out under like John Smith.
Okay.
Well, of course, it's all the same thing. It's like, yeah, well, no, new guy, we don't want that guy.
Wow.
So, and I can tell you, I have never got a denial on a query letter, they call it, basically saying, we're just not interested in your work's not good for us.
Okay, so that's good.
It's always, well, it's already self-published, so we're not interested.
Oh, wow, okay, so that's
you know what I mean?
Though.
So, that's one thing that holds a lot of self-published authors back. The other thing that holds them back is a lot of people don't really know who they are. You don't, you know, you and I are talking here, people around here know me. If I was to go out to, let's just say, Vermont,
Yeah.
They've probably never heard of the book before. You know, I'm sure you'll find a handful of people that might have heard of it and might order it. Same thing with further out west. You know, your name is not as big as like, you know, if you go out to Vermont and you say, hey, do you know TR Michaud or do you know Stephen King? They're going to say, well, we know Stephen King.
Of course.
You know what I mean? So that's another obstacle in front of self-published authors. Finally, I feel that this is another obstacle, and I feel like this is the self-publisher's fault. I'm probably not going to make too many friends saying this as far as self-publisher. But when you go in to sell your book, nobody knows who you are. I feel you have to advocate for yourself.
Of course.
So what I do is I bring in sell sheets, which basically have the synopsis on a piece of paper, and have the cover of the book on a piece of paper, and I bring them in. And what I do is I never, ever, ever sit down at the table. I don't have them put a chair there, nothing.
Wow.
Now, if my girlfriend goes with me, she's at the chair.
Sure.
I don't never get a chair because I am always consistently on the move into the fantasy section, into the young adult section.
So that's not what I thought you were going to say. I thought you were going to say you're going to be selling it to people or advertising it. But what are you doing in the fantasy section?
So I'm going over there because what's happening is I'm bringing these sell sheets with me.
Okay, that's.
And if I see you over there, I go, hey, you like fantasy? Oh yeah, I love fantasy. Oh, check this out. Here's my first book I wrote.
Wow.
Now you got that sell sheet.
Wow.
Now my second book that I wrote is a book called Honor, which is set in medieval England. It has sexual explicit parts in it.
Okay.
So it's more of an adult book, where The Ring of Darkness, the first book I wrote, and the books I'm writing now are young adult to adult.
Sure.
I'll ask them, are you 18? If they say yes, then I go on with, okay, this is the second book I wrote, it's a standalone book. If they say no, then I don't need to tell them anything. They don't need to know nothing.
Yeah.
Because I'm not trying to sell a 16-year-old kid or a 15-year-old kid a book that has sexually explicit stuff in it.
And then you're going to get complaints from the parents. Yeah.
Right.
And it's just,
The problem I find with a lot of the self-publishing authors, and I feel like it's rolled into some of the Barnes and Nobles or the booksellers, is they don't want self-publishing authors there because they come in, they sit down at the table, and they don't do nothing.
Sure.
Well, nobody's going to come up and see you because they don't know who you are. You have to, if you were James Patterson, you're going to have a line that's going straight out that Barnes and Nobles.
He can put his feet up and just be like, okay, thank you.
I met him at Mohegan Suns, okay? This guy had a line going almost all the way through Mohegan Suns, wrapping around to the side.
Wow.
To sell his book, and it was his wife's, came out with a kid book.
Okay, sure.
People know him.
Yeah.
They know what he writes. They like what he writes.
Yeah.
He's got his followers. They're going to see him. You're a self-published author. Nobody knows you. You have to get out there. You have to advocate for yourself. And I feel like that is another obstacle with a lot of self-publishing authors is they don't advocate for themselves while they're in the bookstore.
And so, Taylor, that was an amazing explanation. And then we're going to have a part 2 leading right into building off of this conversation.
Okay.
But this episode is ending soon, and so I just didn't want to cut you off. But I feel like I've just learned so much already, and I'm very interested to talk to you a little bit more just about self-publishing, the pros and the cons, and how to break through.
Right.
Okay, and what you're looking forward to, and what really made you want to be a self-published author rather than try and get hooked up with an agency or with whatever the term would be.
Right.
And
okay.
so we can get into that in part 2. So thank you everyone for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode. Thanks. So.
I'm running.